Sovereignty becomes the buzzword for the fractured republics. Gorbachev walks a political tightrope, strengthening his grip on the rebellious republics, struggling to fulfill his promise of perestroika. His pledge and strength would be challenged in the Second Russian Revolution. January 1991, Soviet troops fired on civilians in front of Lithuania's television station. 13 people died. 3 years earlier, the message from Moscow had been different.
We have seen in our past how the people were excluded from the political process. Today, we must use democracy, and we must use a free press to actively involve the people in decision-making.
By 1988, the changes Gorbachev had launched in the Soviet Union had freed its 15 member republics to strike out for greater independence. The steps taken by one of the smallest, Lithuania, were to shake the foundations of the Soviet Empire.
When Gorbachev came to power, it became clear that some things were going to change. And that meant that changes would be possible in Lithuania, too. What was happening in Moscow was inspiring. And we wondered when perestroika would start in Lithuania.
For 50 years of Soviet occupation, Lithuanian national feelings had been suppressed. Now their reawakening inspired a national movement, Sąjūdis. Several high-ranking Lithuanian communists were among its founders.
We started looking for a name. The National Front wasn't quite right. It didn't sound democratic enough. So finally we decided to call it the Lithuanian Sąjūdis, or movement, for perestroika. We used the word perestroika to prevent attacks on us. We wanted our movement to seem close to what was happening in the Soviet Union, to bring it closer to Gorbachev's perestroika.
Algirdas Brazauskas was Gorbachev's choice to replace a hardliner as boss of the Lithuanian Communist Party. In June of 1988, Brazauskas had spoken at a huge rally organized by Sąjūdis to champion Lithuanian rights. The speech won him enormous popularity.
I started speaking about our economic relations with Moscow. I said we should make Lithuania more independent. Then I began to talk about our flag. That was a memorable moment. I said, we have to bring back our flag, and we will.
Brazauskas at the time didn't say anything about seceding. He said all they wanted was economic independence. They wanted a Swedish consulate. I didn't see any problem with that. A Swedish consulate, okay, have a Swedish consulate. Your own flag, all right. Why not your own national flag? If you don't like this flag, have your own national flag instead of this flag.
Gorbachev sent his most liberal colleague, Politburo member Alexander Yakovlev, to Lithuania. The new leaders looked to his visit to define a new relationship with Moscow. They found the encouragement they were seeking.
Alexander Yakovlev certainly did a lot for us then, because he said what was happening here was in fact part of the same process. had the same character as the perestroika announced by Gorbachev. He guaranteed us that we would be safe, and that top leaders in Moscow understood what was happening and what we wanted.
I admit, we had been operating like an empire. The center really did dictate everything to the republics. So I had to agree with them. If I didn't, it would have been sacrilegious. So of course I supported them, and today I still think I was right.
The liberal Lithuanian communists, in response to public demands, returned the main cathedral in the capital, Vilnius, to the Catholic Church and made Lithuanian, not Russian, the official language of the Republic. The radicals in Sąjūdis, led by Vytautas Landsbergis, wanted more than symbolic reforms. They raised the question of Lithuanian self-determination.
We said we had to meet with Gorbachev because we were sure that we represented Lithuania better than the party or the Supreme Soviet. And that led to our meeting with his deputy, Lukyanov.
We talked about Lithuania's desire to manage itself for self-sufficiency, independence, self-government, and we wanted maximum protection. So we talked about protecting the interests of both the Lithuanians and the other nationalities living in Lithuania.
Two things. There were two things they said we couldn't do. One of the things we couldn't do was reject the Communist Party. And the other thing was that we could never give up socialism.
In other republics, national movements had sprung up in response to Gorbachev's rhetoric of change. The first to erupt was the Southern Republic of Armenia.
The first rallies in Yerevan were very open. People were marching for Gorbachev, for perestroika, the spirit of perestroika. There was real hope. People saw it as a new time. Perestroika meant getting rid of what was unfair in our politics, economy, and society. So, with this hope came this wave of new demands. People expected a fair solution to the problem of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Nagorno-Karabakh is a small mountainous area where Armenians have lived under the rule of the Soviet Republic Azerbaijan since Stalin drew arbitrary borders within his empire.
The problem of Karabakh was a grassroots conflict from the ground up. It soon became a problem that the Republic's leaders couldn't control.
Gorbachev agreed to meet with a moderate spokesman for the nationalists.
The situation, the agony, the cries of pain from Karabakh had been ignored for 70 years. Now the top leaders were finally listening. Gorbachev said the Politburo discussed the question for 4 hours and then asked the Secretariat of the Central Committee to look into the situation and give regular reports. Gorbachev said the links between Karabakh and Armenia would be restored. And we believed him, the way we had believed in perestroika when it first started.